Between two flights barred I. The missed flight. Jake never missed flights. He was the kind of man who arrived early, answered emails if for boarding, and measured his life in calendar alerts and investor calls. At 29, New York had already carved sharp edges into him. His startup was growing fast. His apartment overlooked the Hudson. His life was moving exactly as planned. Until the morning he didn't make it to gate for 2. The delay wasn't dramatic. Just one last phone call, one more negotiation, one more promise that he'd circle back. By the time he reached the terminal, the doors had already closed. Frustrated but strangely calm, Jake stepped into an airport cafe to rebook his flight. That was where he noticed her. Emma sat by the window, camera resting on the table, sunlight catching in her hair. She wasn't scrolling through her phone like everyone else. She was watching people, studying them, as if every stranger carried a story worth remembering. Their conversation started with something forgettable, a comment about delayed flights, but it didn't stay small. 3 hours passed unnoticed. They talked about cities they loved, the fear of standing still, and how strange it felt to chase dreams that constantly moved further away. Emma was flying to Chicago. Jake was supposed to be in Los Angeles when her boarding group was called. Neither of them moved right away. She scribbled her number on a napkin before leaving. Later, when Jake unfolded it, the ink from the last digit had blurred beneath a coffee stain. Part 2. Finding Emma. 4 days. Jake told himself it didn't matter. Airports were full of almosts, almost connections, almost stories. Still, that conversation replayed in his mind. The way she listened without interrupting, the way she seemed unafraid of silence. He searched for her online with nothing but a first name. Manda City. Emma. Chicago. Photographer. There were hundreds. Hours turned into nights. Finally, buried in a tagged airport photo, he found her. The same camera, the same thoughtful expression. He hesitated before sending a message. When she replied, it was polite but distant. She thanked him for the coffee. She said she was glad he found her. She mentioned she didn't believe in long distance. There was something guarded in her tone. Not cold, but careful. Jake could have left it there. Instead, 3 days later, he booked a flight to Chicago. Part 3. Almost something. Chico in autumn felt slower than New York. Quieter. The air carried the promise of change. Emma agreed to meet him again, though she seemed surprised he had come. That weekend unfolded gently. They wandered through neighborhoods lined with brick buildings and golden trees. She showed him the small gallery where her photographs were displayed. He told her about the company he was building, how success felt thrilling and empty at the same time. Bit by bit, Emma revealed pieces of her past. A relationship that had drained her trust. Promises that had sounded beautiful and collapsed under ambition. Jake found himself wanting to prove he was different. On the last night of his visit, his phone rang. An investor from Los Angeles. A contract large enough to change everything. The condition was simple. He needed to relocate immediately. Emma overheard part of the conversation. She didn't say anything at first, but something in her expression shifted. For the first time, the future felt like a fragile thing standing between them. Part 4. The choice. Back in New York, Jake stared at two versions of his life. Los Angeles meant expansion, headlines, recognition. It meant becoming the man he had always intended to be. Chicago meant uncertainty. It meant choosing something he couldn't quantify. Emma grew quieter over their calls. She never asked him to stay, never asked him to choose her. That restraint unsettled him more than pressure would have. When he visited her again, the tension sat heavy between them. She told him she couldn't survive another almost. She refused to be a pause in someone else's journey. Jake insisted she wasn't. But even as he spoke, departure boards and departure times hovered over his thoughts. The morning of his flight to Los Angeles, Emma didn't come to the airport. He told himself it was better that way. Part V. Between two flights at 30,000 feet, everything below looked small. Cities shrank. Roads blurred. Even decisions seemed distant from that height. Jake stared out the window and realized something uncomfortable. He had built his entire life around forward motion, growth, expansion. the next milestone. But Emma had never asked him to move backward, she had asked him to be present. Halfway through the flight, the captain announced a technical issue. The plane would return to New York, passengers groaned. Schedules unraveled. Jake felt something else entirely. Back at the terminal, he stood still for a long moment. Then he opened his phone. Not to call an investor, but to book another flight, this time to Chicago. When Emma opened her apartment door that evening, she looked at him as if she wasn't sure he was real. Jake wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't carrying grand speeches, just certainty. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing the next departure. He was choosing to stay. And somewhere between two flights, Jake finally understood that success meant nothing if there was no one waiting when you landed.